Trump's executive actions are undemocratic, unconstitutional, and unjustified. We should not accept them. We did not vote for this, and by we, I mean American citizens overall. The image of widespread Trump support is a charade. It's a fiction that's meant to intimidate and demoralize his opposition. And we all know that Trump's biggest strength is that he knows how to put on a show. Trump is testing the limits. He's trying to scare us into submission. He doesn't have the backing of the law behind him, and he doesn't have the power of the people behind him. Our political system only works if we collectively allow ourselves to be governed this way. The false idea that Trump won in a landslide discourages us from organizing and pushing back, even though we have the numbers to do so. The things Trump is doing without congressional approval, things like firing government watchdogs, dismantling agencies, freezing federal funding, attacking civil rights like birthright citizenship and equal opportunity employment, allowing Elon Musk to ransack the Treasury and mine our Social Security numbers, those things are illegal, discriminatory, and tyrannical, and many of them were spelled out in Project 2025, which shows us that, yes, this was part of Trump's plan all along, and you should be suspicious of anyone who told you otherwise. And yet, some want to justify this as somehow part of the democratic process because Trump managed to win 77 million votes. A line from Politico's playbook at the end of January said that those accusing Trump of being anti-democratic might note that this is largely democracy in action. This line of thinking makes it seem like any opposition to Trump would be overturning the will of the people, when actually opposing Trump is the more democratic response. If people understood our Constitution, they would know that. So let's bust this myth right here and right now. Here are 4 reasons why Trump's actions are undemocratic, unconstitutional, and unacceptable. And the 4th reason is one you'll probably never see discussed in the establishment media. Hey, I'm Ahsante, and here's what I've been thinking. If you're new here, welcome. On this channel, we're imagining a better political future by looking at how democracy really works and what we the people need for society to thrive. The first reason why Trump's actions are not democratic is that Trump clearly does not have the support of a majority of American citizens. There are about 302 million citizens in the United States. Trump won 77 million votes. That's about 25% of citizens, nowhere close to the majority. In fact, 36% of registered voters didn't vote at all. Not only does this country make it hard to vote by not registering people automatically, unfairly purging voter rolls, not providing universal identification, holding elections on a workday rather than creating a holiday or holding them on a weekend, all things we should address if we really want to see democracy in action. But even if you are registered to vote, we only have the choice between 2 parties, neither of which did a great job of appealing to the needs of ordinary Americans. We had the choice between the status quo and a con artist when most Americans wanted genuine change. There was no genuine change on the ballot. That's a failure of democracy, not a success. A congruent democracy would use systems like ranked choice voting and open primaries and publicly funded elections to make sure that voters have more choices that actually represent their interests. And then even for people who did cast the ballot, Trump didn't win a majority of votes. He won a plurality, 49.8% of the popular vote, compared to Kamala Harris's 48.3%. That's 1.5 percentage points difference. That's less of a difference than Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by back in 2016. This is part of why, as I said in this video, no, Trump is not who we are as a country. This country is divided. Trump swept the Electoral College because he had marginal victories across the country. That's very different from having overwhelming support. Don't let the map fool you. Don't let the Electoral College fool you. Trump's win was not a landslide, it's not reflective of what most Americans actually want, and it does not give Trump a mandate. Trump wants you to think he has a mandate, so his team is repeating it, and some media has picked up on that language, but that's not the case. And only a fraction of that 25% of Americans who voted for Trump are diehard MAGA extremists. A 2022 study by the UC Davis Violence Prevention Research Program found that MAGA Republicans, defined as the Trump voters who agree with the statement that the 2020 election was stolen, make up an estimated 33% of Republican voters and 15% of the U.S. population as a whole. 15%. They're very loud, they're very visible, and they're very clearly in the minority. So yes, Trump won an election, but he doesn't have the support of a majority of Americans. That's not democratic, even if you only think of democracy as being majority rule, which it's not. That brings me to the second reason why Trump's executive actions are not democratic, and that is that democracy is not just majority vote. Democracy, as I explained in this video, is about political equality. That includes the idea that's engraved on the entrance to the Supreme Court building: equal justice under the law. Democracy comes in many forms, and while in the early days of America's founding, people thought of democracy as just majority vote, that's called direct democracy, today we think of democracy as including the rule of law and individual rights. We also, unlike America's founders, don't think it's fair to enslave certain groups of people or to treat women and minority ethnic groups as second-class citizens. The idea of individual rights for all people that are enforced by the rule of law is part of the philosophy of liberalism, so the democratic system we refer to today is liberal democracy. America was founded as a republic and was designed for elite rule. Anyone who's arguing for the idea that America should be a republic and not a democracy is really arguing for wealthy elites to be able to control their lives. That's how things were at the founding. After all, in the original Constitution, the most powerful chamber in the most powerful branch of government, the Senate, was not elected. America has only become a democracy, a democratic republic, as we've expanded freedom and rights to be for all people, not just for the wealthy white male few. America wouldn't really count as a democracy until Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So with those things in mind, what we call democracies today are not direct democracies, nor are they just republics controlled by groups of elites. Rather, they are liberal, representative, constitutional, democratic republics. But democracy is much shorter, so that's how we communicate it. So by that definition, it's not democratic if 70% of people vote to slaughter the other 30%, because doing that would violate the individual rights of that 30%. You know, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it would also violate the law that says, no, you're not allowed to kill people. The founders wouldn't even agree to having a constitution with federal power unless there was a Bill of Rights that came right along with it. According to the founding framework of this country, federal power is unacceptable unless individual rights are respected and constitutional rules are followed. But you wouldn't know that looking at Trump's White House, especially because they removed the Constitution from the White House's website. Yet another sign that Trump's Republican Party is not conservative. He's not conserving the constitutional order. He's destroying it so he can concentrate political power to revolve around himself. That's dictatorial, not democratic. And the less you know about the Constitution, the better. Any action that violates the law, concentrates power, and strips equal rights away from certain groups of people is undemocratic, even if 70% of people had voted for it, which they didn't. The third reason Trump's moves are undemocratic is that the president's job is to execute the will of the people, not the other way around. Trump is not entitled to dictate the direction of this country. Because America's founders were so worried about the danger of concentrated executive power, they created checks and balances. Each of the three branches of government was designed to be able to check the power of the other branches. But of the three branches, the one with the most power to determine the direction of the country, the first branch mentioned in the Constitution, is Congress. Executive orders are not laws. Congress has the power to establish the laws, which are the rules we live by. Congress has the power to make decisions on spending and what gets funded. Congress has the power to regulate commerce between states. Congress has the power to create or eliminate government agencies. Congress has the power to approve the president's requests for cabinet members and Supreme Court judges. Congress has the power to declare war. Congress, of course, is the branch of government that represents the people most directly. We vote for representatives who come from our own communities, who know about our local issues, who we can influence the most directly. The executive is supposed to execute the laws that Congress creates. It's not supposed to single-handedly destroy agencies or determine what programs get funding. That's Congress's job. Now, Congress hasn't been doing its job. It's given up lots of its power to the executive. But allegedly, according to the Constitution, that's their job. In theory, according to the Constitution, Congress basically makes the overall plan, and the executive has to actually do the project. The civil service bureaucracy of the executive branch, headed by the president, is there to carry out the wishes of Congress on a national scale, and that bureaucracy is designed to handle all the complexities that go along with trying to govern 300 million people. And having an official, professional bureaucracy with rules and procedures helps to ensure that the process of executing the law is fair, rather than showing favoritism to any particular group, or to whoever the president happens to like best that day. Bureaucracies aren't perfect, and the one we have leaves a lot to be desired, but bureaucracies tend to be a lot less corrupt and more competent than dictatorial governments that revolve around loyalty to a single leader. In a system without any oversight on the supreme leader, he and his loyal henchmen can enrich themselves by stealing your tax dollars and giving you nothing in return. Because who's going to make them? Nobody, that's who, because you took out the entire government. Everyone's just busy bowing to their master. The president isn't supposed to make the rules according to his own whims. He doesn't set the agenda. We're supposed to make the rules through our congressional representatives. Now, Congress hasn't been working very well for a long time, but that's yet another way in which democracy is failing to work properly. The power of Congress is the key distinction between having a democratic republic and having a king. And the entire point of the founding of this country is that we don't do kings.
Period.
Trump is trying to bend the entire government to serve his desires rather than having his office execute our desires that we've expressed through who we voted to represent us specifically. Part of the reason he's been able to do that is because our representatives in Congress are refusing to do their job. Specifically, Republicans in the Trump era have consistently put loyalty to their party over loyalty to the country. America's founders were worried about protecting the rights of individuals and putting constraints on the power of individuals, but they failed to consider the power of groups. The founders didn't realize that we would have political parties. This is the problem with thinking in an individualistic way. We don't become successful or powerful on our own. We rely on groups of people to support us, and we rely on people within our own groups to tell us what to believe and how to think, because it's impossible for us to research and process every piece of information that's out there for ourselves. So our political parties play a key role in raising certain people to power and in helping us to make our own political decisions. The issue is that the Republican Party has become a party of such extreme conformity and one that's so wrapped up in celebrity and illusions that it's become more important to pledge allegiance to one man than it is to actually deliver any real results for the people who are voting for you. Republicans in Congress have been more concerned with protecting their own careers than with protecting the country from a tyrant, or with protecting their own voters from economic hardship. Red states are generally poorer than blue states and typically need more help from the federal government. So destroying the federal government and cutting off federal funding will hurt everyone, but will hurt people in red states the most. And the federal government, with its ability to tax the rich and set minimum wage laws and protect union rights, is the only force powerful enough to protect people from the exploitation of huge multinational corporations that would otherwise keep them in poverty. But the issue is that many of the voters in red states don't know that. They know that they're struggling, they know that the economy has serious problems, and they're right about that, but they don't know the real solutions. Republicans, in partnership with big business, have worked for decades to make sure they don't know the solutions, to convince voters to hate the federal government and love the so-called free market. The book The Big Myth gives a great detailed history of how those ideas have spread. Not only that, but Trump has encouraged people to blame this country's problems on immigrants and DEI. He's arguing that putting America first by refusing to help anyone else will make us stronger, when in reality it will isolate us and turn our allies into enemies, which makes us weak. He said that tariffs would help the economy, when in reality they would hurt the economy. He said that he'll end corruption, when in reality he himself is corrupt. He said that his plans were completely unrelated to Project 2025. He said that the criminal cases against him were a witch hunt and that January 6th was a day of love. This brings me to the fourth and final reason why Trump's actions are not democratic, and that is, it's not democratic if it's based in deception. In a democracy, the people choose who they want to represent them and whose policies will serve them the best. If a leader wants to gain popular support in a democratic way, then they have to be honest about who they are and what their intentions are so that the options are clear. People need an accurate picture of what they're choosing for it to be a real choice. Having democracy in action requires good information. That's part of why democracy requires a free press that's focused on pursuing the truth and sharing that truth with the public. This is also why public education is important. You need to have a basic understanding of how society really works, like what a tariff does, for example, in order to make accurate decisions about how we should craft society to best suit our needs. And if I haven't been educated on how the economy works, then I might believe a politician who claims that tariffs will lower grocery prices, or that wealth trickles down to the rest of society, or that I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps, because in that case, I literally would not know any better, and the politicians are taking advantage of that. If politicians lie to us and we believe them, then they're manipulating us into choosing something that we don't actually want. They've taken away our freedom to choose. Now, we're used to politicians lying about themselves. That part is not unique to Trump or the Republican Party. Biden claimed that he could run the country for 4 more years, when, come to find out, he could barely put a sentence together. But it's common for people to lie about their own actions in order to make themselves look better or to deny responsibility for something they did wrong. That's something that any mature adult should know to expect. What we don't usually expect is for someone to be consistently lying not just about themselves, but about the nature of reality. We certainly don't expect the entire group around us to be lying about the nature of reality. If your leaders are saying, for example, that climate change isn't real, and the media you watch is saying that climate change isn't real, and your church and your school and the people in your neighborhood are saying that climate change isn't real, then you might start to think that climate change isn't real. This is different from persuasion. Persuasion is based on presenting the truth in a compelling way that gets someone to logically accept your argument based on the reality of the situation you present. You bring in new information or new ideas that the person hadn't thought about in that way before. Manipulation is based on lies and deception, making false claims that distort reality, or getting an emotional response that overrides someone's logical reasoning about what would actually be good for them. Humans are fundamentally irrational creatures, and we're all vulnerable to being manipulated and deceived. That's not an insult, that's a fact. A true fact, not the other kinds. Trump regularly makes and repeats false claims, distorts reality, and uses fear and intimidation to get his way. And the leaders of the Republican Party, rather than rejecting this, have gone along with it. You can't say that it's a democratic choice if people are being systematically lied to or scared into submission. And let's be real, the Democrats haven't proven that they're a reliable source of information either. This would be where a free and independent press comes in. But we don't really have that either, because the big players in the establishment media and in social media are clearly in the pockets of corporate elites. The same pockets that many of the politicians are in. This is why you don't hear this fourth reason talked about in the establishment media, because it implicates them. It means that either, one, they've been so focused on creating headlines that get as many eyeballs as possible that they haven't provided enough of the important information that citizens need to understand the big picture of what's really going on, or two, they haven't done a good job of earning and keeping the trust of the American people, so that even if they were telling the truth, they aren't believable. They've been protecting elite power rather than challenging it, all while coming off as elitists themselves. The solution to this, what we would need to actually have a democracy, is to support local media and independent journalism. Smaller outlets designed to serve specific communities don't need to focus as much on maximizing their profits. If a media outlet is supported by its community, then it can focus on truly serving those people, rather than serving advertisers. And by the way, this is what I'm trying to build here on this channel, so a big thank you to the brilliant beans over on Patreon who are supporting my work. If you want to help me to make more videos, then consider joining, or you could buy me a coffee as a one-time contribution. Link to both of those are in the description. I appreciate it. But sadly, independent pro-democracy media channels are rare. Local media is a shell of its former self, and the establishment news outlets haven't been transparent or connected with the ordinary Americans who they supposedly serve. The big players are the ones who chase ratings, who put on a good show, and putting on a show happens to be what Trump does best. Elections have become exercises in mass manipulation. It's not a democratic choice if the people are being undereducated, misinformed, and systematically lied to. So no, this is not democracy at work. This is something else. As historian Nancy McLean chronicles in her book Democracy in Chains, this is an extremist takeover that radical right-wing corporatists and white Christian nationalists have had in the making for decades, and that Democrats have done very little to stop. If 25% of Americans elected a deceptive, seditious tyrant who's making a power grab over the legislature, violating individual rights, and disregarding the Constitution, then it's within our rights and honestly within our national duty as Americans to push back against that tyrannical behavior. Somebody has to, because the establishment Republican Party refused to stop him when they had the chance, like either of the 3 times he ran for the party's nomination, or either of the 2 times he was impeached. And the Democratic Party, while they can be vocally opposing this, as some of them are and as they should be, they're the minority in Congress, which means that right now they don't have the political power to stop him. So it's going to be on us, the people, civil society, to stand up for ourselves. That'll require a range of things, the first of which is finding our own sense of courage and not being defeatist. I made a whole video, which you can watch here, about how we can continue to have hope and how powerful hope is in pushing for social change. Standing up for ourselves means changing the narrative from one where Trump is a scary, all-powerful, almighty figure with a huge base of support to one where those of us who want a real democracy outnumber them. One where, since many Trump voters were deceived into voting for him, that they could be persuaded to think otherwise, especially once the pain of a Trump administration starts to hit them personally. Now, you can't force someone to change their mind, but standing up to Trump's regime means that if you have a relationship with a Trump voting family member or former friend, that you stay in touch enough to provide them a tether to reality, that you're at least present enough to be someone who they could turn to, someone within their group who has the ability to tell them the truth whenever they're ready for it. Standing up to the Trump regime means that since the federal government won't be supporting us, that we'll need to support ourselves. We'll need to build up our own communities. We'll need to participate in groups where we can build trust, build power, and share accurate information. And it means that if and when there is some sort of confrontation between you and the government, that you have the solidarity to hold the line, that we collectively refuse to comply with illegal orders or to rat out our colleagues for being disloyal to the regime. Our loyalty needs to lie with our own community, not with the people trying to take over our country. And it means that in a society that's taught us to be docile and passive, that's taught us to rely on a boss to tell us what to do, to rely on technology to do our thinking for us, to rely on drugs and entertainment to numb our anxiety and escape hard realities. It means that in the face of those temptations, we need to make ourselves as strong and resilient as possible. We need to be strong physically, mentally, emotionally, and intellectually. We need to be able to face the hard realities and think for ourselves. As a society, we've been slacking. We've been bickering in internet comments rather than building our communities. We've taken our rights for granted while corporations have taken control. But now it'll be up to us to get ourselves in shape, to nourish our bodies, to organize our communities, and to educate ourselves. My role that I'm taking up is to help inspire that culture of courage and to help you to educate yourself. Along those lines, if you want to learn more about exactly why democracy is important and exactly what we should be fighting for, then check out my pro-democracy reading guide, which you can find linked in the description. It'll also sign you up for my email newsletter. That way, we'll get to stay connected. Don't rely on an algorithm to get you the information that you need to know. And the other part of the answer is to get organized. So if you're looking for some organizations to get involved in, I've also compiled a list of ideas to get you started. The link to that is in the description as well. We have the power in numbers, and the government is supposed to serve us. In the ideal scenario, if we can build ourselves a congruent democracy, then the government is us. We could take this opportunity to build a persuasive grassroots opposition movement based in reality, not deception, that pushes out tyrants and supports leaders that actually represent what we the people want and holds those leaders accountable. That would be democracy in action. Or we could give up, be passive, hold grudges and refuse to organize, and thereby allow the extremist corrupt criminals to take over the country, steal our money, and make us more vulnerable to foreign attacks. That's not the choice I would make, but this isn't just up to me. This is something we have to do together. I'll let you make up your own mind. Think about it.